cycle of economic, societal, and government upheaval, so you can stay ahead of the changes in our world and keep your family safe. Fortunately for us, we can recognize that we're at the precipice, a point in history where we can all see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us. So let's start the conversation, and welcome to the show.
And this beautiful blue planet, what did you do today? Be grateful, thankful that you had another day to breathe breath in this existence while we are manifesting in a new magnetic field on this planet. I thank each and every one of you for joining our conversation so we can find solutions as we move through the changes. You know, tonight is about 3 events inbound that are going to affect all of our lives from now through April of 2025. How governments are trying to control the awareness of change in a new magnetic field, like literally how you're going to think about reality in a different way. You're just going to think differently as we move through October. You might start to question a lot of things because a new magnetic field means that the hemispheres and the lobes of your brain are going to fire differently between each other because there's a new resonance. There's a new electrical field within that. And then we come to the Shepherd's Cross on December 6th, where Jupiter, Earth, Mercury, and the Sun make a perfect line. And on the same day in the same second, Mars, Earth, and Venus cross. And they call it the Shepherd's Cross. And as we come into April of 2025, well, the Earth will have spun around outside that amplified magnetic field to be the only thing in the entire solar system in front of the sun. And if you think we're seeing a lot of fireballs right now, I sent Ransom a graphic earlier that shows how we're just barely on the side of this thing. Logical Society. And take a look at the amount of fireballs tonight and the largeness and the reporting. You know, usually when you get fireballs reported or meteors, meteorites, something, normally it's like 1 state or maybe 2. You know, grandiose fireballs in the sky would be 3 states prior. But now we're seeing like 5 states, 7 state fireball reportings from a single event, which is rare because it's so high up and it's so bright and and a lot of times there's ground shocks and window breaks and this sort of thing. And even pieces of the meteor, and when it does strike ground, it becomes a meteorite, you know. So we're getting a lot of meteorite reportings as well, which is way above. So reporting meteor sightings of seeing like something coming through and glowing green or yellow or whatever, bluish, that's something different than actually meteorite reportings. And the meteorite reporting is something like 7 times higher than it's been since the 1990s. So you got to go, okay, what's going on? And then we're seeing the sun behave strangely. And also they're referring right back to the 1990s and something that the sun suddenly turned on to this incredible amount of activity, which was not normally none of the forecasters got it right, either on the high side or the low side. You had the grand solar minimum crowd like myself with a lot of others that were predicting that it would be lower than normal solar activity. But at the same time, there was a group that said, hey, it's going to be normal of the last solar cycle 24 or maybe a little bit above. But the straight up vertical rise in sunspots is just, everybody's projections, low or high, are absolutely blown out of the water. Nobody's correct this solar cycle, which was, this is a strange thing. The prediction was there would be incredibly different solar activity as we came into a new cycle that would disrupt civilization and disrupt food production. And here we are at a sun that makes no sense. Our star is behaving so strangely, and we have all these meteorites and fireballs rolling in. Something definitely is coming our way. So when you look out at the greater landscape of just how the world's been bent or forced, and how now powers that be is the best term I could say, are trying to maintain control We're going to try to put a causation to that tonight. And, Ransom, thank you for joining me. We got Ryan over here on the keyboard. If any of y'all have questions on Rumble, please throw them to us. And also over on YouTube on the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast, we're starting to transition over into Rumble only. YouTube has been giving us a few problems with that channel. So we're going to have to, as we have these discussions, I do believe in the future are going to have to cut the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast YouTube channel. And we're just going to move over to Rumble because it's just the way it is. So please ask some questions tonight. We're monitoring 6 or 7 different platforms. We got Vigilante TV. Thank you, Jeff, for allowing us there. We got over on Brighteon TV, Mike Adams. Thanks you for letting us take this 10 p.m. to midnight live stream spot on Brighteon.com, as well as the different YouTube, Twitter/X. A lot of people still remember there's Twitter, and the Facebook Live. We're trying to get on Telegram right now, but I haven't been able to integrate that. So tech issue there. Anyway, Ransom, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining. And we'll pass the mic right over to Ryan after you get into a little monologue of, are we talking about space weather tonight? There's another X-flare which shall hit tomorrow somewhere around 4 a.m. That's later tonight after midnight, like 4 or 5 a.m. Look for some strange aurora in a sky near you in about, about 8 or 9 hours from now, 8 hours from now.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Last time we had a solar storm, I got out there and you could, if you looked away from north, you could kind of see it. But we had to get out cameras and take pictures, and sure enough, the entire sky was lit up pink, and it was really cool last time because you could kind of see it, but not really. So I bet people up north were enjoying some good stuff, and I think they're about to again. I was looking at, we have all kinds of stuff going around naturally just everywhere. I mean, right now we got people out of power here, out of power because of fire, out of power because of storms. Everybody's out of power. Everybody's dealing with it. We have on a national stage, speaking of food, talking about whether or not people are eating pets or not. And, a couple of shows ago, I kind of brought up the fact that there are large organizations of people that make money dealing in pets, and there's so much of it that there's literally like a crime syndicate that steals dogs, right? So right now they're in it for the species, because they know that people will pay big bucks for certain breeds of dogs, especially if they're puppies. So they're not only, producing a lot of these, which, of course is illegal. People get busted all the time for having these giant facilities full of pets they're not really taken care of. They're just in cages, hoping to make that buck or two on a purebred dog. But that's just one aspect of it. And now on the national stage, they're literally talking about whether or not people do or don't eat certain animals. And the answer to that is yes. And they're doing it all over the world. But it's not nothing new. And, from a certain perspective, it's not any different from any other food source. And I brought up the fact that these same organizations, and we weren't talking about what they're talking about now. I was talking about good old fashioned starving Americans when they ran out of food. What would happen to all the pets? And pointing out that we know, like in Venezuela and other places, what happens to the pets. And is that really too far, crazy to think about that for your own survival, that you might one day also make that decision, to go there? I don't know. I have, maybe I'm already hoarding the meat because I have like 7 cats and a pit bull, Is that really too far out there to think that if things go bad in the economy, and money isn't worth what it used to be, and it's harder to get groceries, and then there's supply chain issues for any number of reasons that are just here terrestrial, fires, storms, things like that knock out civilization on a routine. And we're not even talking about the big stuff, volcanoes, tsunamis, giant earthquakes. But there's a lot of rumblings in those departments as well that may be here in the near future people are going to have to deal with. And so, when you see these, the national argument bringing up the fact that, hey, we don't want to live in a country that eats their pets, they're not thinking in the same way that I'm thinking when I'm saying that I don't want to live in a country that doesn't eat their pets. I'm talking about a scenario in which no one has food, and your roaming pets are fair game, just like any other wildlife when it comes down to it. But there's already armed criminal organizations that deal and specialize in the trade of bushmeat and other places, and here in the U.S. it's rare pets. You don't think that those organizations would immediately shift to facilitating food? I was watching a documentary just yesterday about Haiti, ironically, no relation to the topic, but in Haiti, they didn't have any animals for the last decade really around. And I'm not going to say why, but they're just not there. So they're making these weird mud cookies. And it reminded me of a lot of, the stories of gruel that Roman soldiers eat, except for in their version, there really is no food. It's just literally dirt cookies, sometimes with sugar, sometimes with flour, maybe a little lard in there. And they're literally just eating mud pies to fill their stomach. Now, they were hit by a series of unfortunate events all the way back, early in their history. But more recently, you remember they had a massive earthquake there, followed by a massive hurricane that just rolled over the island and made everything worse. And then you had NGOs and international heroes that came but didn't actually do any heroing when they got there. They just, facilitated more of the disappearance of any resources that there might have been. And it's hard to judge people leaving what I would call hell on earth. I mean, why would you want to live in a place that doesn't have any infrastructure? It's been completely flattened by Mother Nature. It's been ignored by other countries and international help. When it's even being offered from the good people from around the world, it's not like there's not plenty of charity to go around. It's the people that are in charge of facilitating said help that seem to make sure that it never happens. So it's hard to judge people fleeing those areas in the world. But the problem is the more of those people that are willing to do anything because they've had to are around, and then things go bad. Guess what? They all have a leg up, so to speak, on everyone else, as far as they've already found the line and crossed the line in being a Homo sapien on the planet when things are rough. Now, we know this same type of behavior has happened all throughout history, in everyone's history, from every culture around the world. At some time, there has been some kind of catastrophe that has happened to the people of that area, in which they resorted to eating every single animal, including other man. I mean, this is just a known fact. Like, even when I did my own genetic testing, you get specific groups that you're related to in the ancient past, and I know for a fact that some of those, resorted to cannibalism. Now, do you think those people, when they were hungry, surviving, and they got kids to feed, really care, your emotional relationship to an animal that looks like meat to them? And the idea that it can't happen anywhere is, preposterous, because we know that it does. So whenever you start seeing these civilization indicators, and I would say that massive homelessness, eating of the wildlife kind of without the permission from the king's men, or the urban wildlife, whatever it is that they're doing, those same people will take what you got. They'll take what you got because they want it and they feel like they need it. And unfortunately for the Western world, they are going to have to realign their mindset to deal with the fact that people in other places have had to live other ways, and they have different ideas about what they're willing to go through to be around for the long haul. So we kind of have to think about that too, but not necessarily in a so bad way. And that's where agriculture obviously comes in. So when you hear all of these people talking about banning meats and banning all of these other things, that that's anti-human, and that is the symptom of the problem that's coming to arise around the world. And it was funny to listen to the debate the other night because the entire program was made for TV. It was untruthful from many different ways. And I think they're really about to pull something, major this year or right at the beginning of 2025. I don't think the powers that be are going to wait. So if there's any, big things coming as far as Mother Nature or the universe, we might just be in a real pickle.
Oh man, great intro, Ransom. This is Ryan here. I'm just doing some technical stuff on the side, monitoring some chats, and I was trying to do some more technical stuff, but I'm dealing with Skype and some Microsoft Office stuff. So Mr. Gates is hitting me pretty hard. I'm sure you're familiar with that, but yeah, going into, you were just mentioning the whole like cannibalism thing. I was just I'm going to Peru next month. And so as part of my pregame for that, I was looking at some podcasts from this guy who was on Tucker Carlson recently, Daryl Cooper. And he has a really good channel, Martyr Made channel. And he had a 3-episode series on the Aztecs. And he just deep dives into the psychology of cannibalism and how, ancient societies were doing it and like wean themselves off of it, and like the different ways they would like substitute cannibalism for doing other things where they're doing rituals that are mimicking cannibalism to kind of wean themselves off of it. And freaky, that one will blow your mind if you look into it. I'm just hanging out here, just doing some technical stuff in the background. So I think we got some chats here we can check out. We got people talking about the debate. I know we're not diving too much into politics, but it is funny how the mainstream media will come out and say that one side like won emphatically, while on the other side they're making songs based on what things that the Republican was saying, and that's trending all over TikTok right now.
The cat's in the kettle at the peaking moon. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got Runs with Scissors says
Jim Croce, man. That was Jim Croce original.
Yeah, we got Runs with Scissors says eat more cattle. We got some stuff here. I got David Bernal over here. I don't know if you want to address this, David. He is also asking if maybe there could be something tied in with, like meteorites coming in the future. You're talking about these magnetic fields, these gravitational fields with Jupiter, Saturn, the sun, and everything. He's asking if maybe the approach of Nibiru, a fabled long-lost planet X, Planet 9, could be a factor there. Do you think that's the case?
I will say it is otherwise known as wormwood from the Bible. Now, just as a fact across the universe, literally almost all known galaxies have twin stars. There's only about, I think it's 15%. Don't quote me on the exact number. 13, 15, somewhere. It's under 15% of stars that are only single stars across all known. Everything has a twin orbit body with it. I don't know, because you got to think about nuclei or something in terms of like strings of pearls on a Birkeland current in star formation, that you're getting twins, if you will, of stars. Now the story goes, and I will, for anybody who wants to listen to a little bit of Sumerian tale here, this Nibiru is an unignited brown dwarf just like Jupiter, but it's a little bit larger than Jupiter. And the stories were that there was another planet between Mars and Jupiter called Tiamat that was smashed into, and then this Nibiru grazed part of the side, caused what we now know as the asteroid belt, and that was the remnants of a prior planet with a full direct collision that was witnessed by those around that had great stories of this. They called it battles in the skies, and you would consider it legend now, but there's no relevance given to it. And then the Electric Universe Thunderbolts project also talks about going far back before the Tiamat collision to the possibility that Saturn was another ignited star within, and the sun, and then the Earth and Mars also, and Saturn was glowing brighter to the point where it emitted heat itself. So we start to go back into some more of these, deeper ties in ancient history of the planets glowing brighter. Now, the reason I would say that is, Ransom, I sent you that PDF that I've been working on, and coming in October, which is like a month and a half from now, late October, Earth's going to be sandwiched between the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, making a square, or forming what they consider a square, like the most square formation that can be combined in an orbit that's in a circular orbit. Obviously, they're not going to be a perfect square because we're in a circular orbit, but the way that the planets line themselves up, it's considered a squaring. You can go back through the orbital diagrams. You can go back through, solar system scope. And what's interesting is when I first did this research way back in like 2015, 16-ish, solar system scope would allow you to go back into the BC era, way back into like 2500 BC, and do a lot of orbital geometry and see where the planets were in their orbits related to other planetary bodies. So where was Jupiter related to Saturn? Where was Neptune related to Jupiter? Where was the Earth in all of this? But recently they have updated their software where you can only go back a few hundred years and look for things, which I found interesting in itself. So you go off the Universe Sandbox, and that's another good one to use. Now the JPL, it seems precise, but it's such like a Atari version of where our planets would be. I'm so surprised that NASA, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, can't come up with a little bit better graphics than like a yellow dot, a blue dot, a green dot, like on really? After all this in the billions and hundreds of billions we put in, that's all the better they can do is like Atari graphics from the 1970s to show where the planets are in their orbits. But they can give you the declination and all these different kind of parameters there with mathematics. But when you're looking at the orbits, it's really just like a circle with a dot on it. They don't, because those dots are all uniform size. So even if you're going to try to come out and take a look at, okay, what is the size of the planet? Jupiter's no larger than the Earth. It's just a dot on the thing where, even, people consider rudimentary, the planetstoday.com, which people go, oh, that's too rudimentary. Well, at least they show you the size difference in the planets. Like JPL can't even show you the size difference in the planets on the orbits. That's crazy. Like, how do you come to this? Got all these millions and billions of dollars programmers, but everything's a dot. Like, that's misleading in itself. So there's got to be some equilibrium in the middle there. So back to the point in Nibiru, I personally have not seen any perturbation or change. In other words, like perturbation is a big word they used to say, like something knocked something else out of its orbit gravitationally or electromagnetically. Like if that Nibiru was really close to us, another Jupiter-sized or a little bit larger than Jupiter unignited star, like the planets would be out of their normal orbits by now, and we as backyard telescope observers would be able to see something by that. Like now, we would definitely be able to see it. Because, they're talking about it coming into sort of very close proximity to the inner solar system. I don't care if it's unignited or not. By that point, you're going to see some like charcoal-ish thing moving through, charcoal with a few ebbs of sort of red in there, you would see something for sure by now. You know how many millions of observers there are out there across, if not tens of millions of people with telescopes now looking for things every single day? Do you think they would not observe that, wait, something is not where the model predicted it would be? Whether it's stellarium, that's another great one to go to, stellarium. And there's, at least 10, maybe 12 different online apps that you can look to see where the planets are supposed to be, where the satellites are going overhead, where the stars are, what kind of alignments are. Something would be way super, super out of its possible mathematically planned trajectory that people would notice it instantly. Thousands of people would be putting up posts everywhere. Dude, it's in the wrong place. And that's the whole thing about wormwood. I absolutely believe it's true. Absolutely 1,000% believe we have a twin star. But not at the orbit. It's probably at close to perihelion, which means the furthest distance from the sun before it starts returning around. Because apparently this thing has a 3,600-year orbit. A 3,600-year orbit. Now, I just don't know if it's that close. Perhaps it's halfway back. But the thing is, too, on the Sumerian myths and legends, this Nibiru planet is... Now, again, I'll come up to something strange, and I might go a little woo-woo. Hope not to go too woo-woo on you. But the stories of the ancients, the Sumerians were these giants that, came back and set up gold mines on our planet because they needed this monatomic gold to spray into the atmosphere. Now, this is just from the legends and what was written down in the Bible itself. So any of you out there that believe the Bible is a true book of words of recording the past into the future of what's prophesied, that is a true thing. The Anunnaki are a real race of people. Or a real race of beings. I don't know if they're actually people, but they are beings. And if you just take that simple context of they are real beings, and they come around on a certain orbit, and because their planet last time smacked into Tiamat between Mars and Jupiter and created the asteroid belt, they have a few problems with their atmosphere. So they need monatomic gold. So in this orbit, they come back and they collect all the gold on Earth and they bring it up and they do whatever they need to do with it for their atmosphere. So it's just so interesting for me on the woo-woo factor that I do have a new news story for you here. 159 countries are now moving over to a new global payment system, isolating the U.S. dollar. But it's all based on gold and central bank reserves. So, walk through me with this thought experiment. If you were the Anunnaki coming back again, would you not want to have your gold in a central repository where all we have to do is go to 100 places to pick up all the gold on the planet? Okay. Now, suddenly we have an entirely new currency that's going to be backed by gold 40%, then natural resources on top of that, and then native currencies or traditional currencies of those countries swapped in between itself, all on some sort of XRP distributed ledger that's going to settle within every 5 seconds or something like this is the plan. I don't know exactly the number of seconds, between 5 and 10 seconds on a global settlement on a ledger. They're going to use DLT. So the only one that I know that's on ready to go at that level is Ripple. So put those three things in order here. We're going to a faster base currency on a digital level. That's going to be all, zeroed out literally within 10 seconds of everything. It takes a whole day. These bankers now, they start in the morning and the night, and then they finally get off at 3 and they go golfing on Wednesdays, but they finally zero everything out in the evening somewhere along the way with the Fed. All right, but this thing's going to settle itself every 10 seconds to zero again on the balance sheets. And it's going to be backed by gold 40%, which means every single one of these 159 participants are going to have a central repository of gold by the tons in their country somewhere in one single spot. Now, would that make it really easy collection? I think it would. So I'm trying to spin this out and say that they're going to have to print an enormous amount of more money. If this is true in any way, shape, or form, we'll know here at the end of September when the BRICS have their formal meeting. I think it's coming up on the 26th, but don't, it's some hearsay, I would be protective as well, because, the U.S. is going to be out there trying to smash this meeting, try to disrupt it at any cost. Because after this meeting is solidified, 159 new countries join BRICS in unison, and they ditch the dollar all in the same month. Now, they're not going to ditch it entirely. They can't. You understand that? They can't do it in one single day, and like this, Sandman or Ice 9 event's going to happen. Not going to. But for them to solidify an all-signed contract for 159 countries out of 208 to go to a different payment system outside the dollar, that's crazy. And who do we have here? Taco Banana. Thank you for the comment here. Lynette Zhang says gold could hit $40,000 plus per ounce on an overnight revaluation. And as a matter of fact, I've done more than a handful of interviews with Lynette, which you can find over on the Adapt 2030 channel. We talked about this on our last program as well. As the BRICS takes hold, and as the U.S. prints to the point, we are literally at the point where we are printing so much money that the interest payments alone are more than the taxpayers, all of them combined, including corporate and individual, of every tax collected in America will not be enough just to meet the interest payment. Now, at that point, everybody understands it's done, because you can't milk the citizens anymore, because if you try to increase our taxes from the already 39% that most of us pay, that they're going to try to increase that to 50, 67, that you're going to destroy the economy and implode it in a second. So we've reached that rollover point literally within months. And it's so interesting that this BRICS meeting comes at the exact same point, literally within a month of 30 days or under, where we have rolled over in America, where we can no longer even service the interest on our bonds with the amount of taxes that everybody in America and the corporations pays. Now, the timing on this thing is a little weird, but, coming into the celestial events that we're going to see too also is a little strange. Dual magnetic fields that the Earth's going to roll through between the sun and the four gas giants, creating a second toroid field. And we got the Shepherd's Cross coming in December 6th. Jupiter, Earth, Mercury, Sun, and on the same crossing we have Mars, Earth, and Venus in a cross, literally a galactic cross. Then we get the fireball pounding bombardment. Literally, our world's going to be reshaped with this thing. You talk about people running to caves and being fearful for their lives. When you see daytime fireballs coming and exploding, breaking windows on ground shock day after day after day after month, because this thing's going to last 4 months, at least 4 months. And we will pray on our knees that the ground will stop shaking, that the air will stop reverberating from the shocks through these meteorites coming in. That's how many are going to come in and get tugged into us, because we're going into a debris field. It's going to be a more debris dense region of space. We're already entering. It's been like that for a couple of years. Nothing new. And all this, and every time they come in, they're going to create a shock wave. Now, can you imagine hundreds coming in a day that are creating shock waves? Like, it'll literally shake the planet, and it'll shake the atmosphere. And your eardrums, I wish, wear earplugs during this time, because your ears are going to rupture as we go through this thing. And, you're trying to bring this all on, and we're coming to a new gold-based system, and the entire world's shifting away from U.S. dollar holdings. And there's a huge amount of disruption coming. So how do we get ready for it? The same thing as we've been talking about. You're going to need to grow your own food as the supply chain, breaks down. Or I shouldn't say breaks down, is disrupted because of earth changes that are disrupting our infrastructure. But at the same time, there's going to be very little farm financing moving forward. But we need the farm finance so those guys can get their seed and get their fuels and get their machines repaired. If they don't have financing for that, and our entire global economic system's in flux, then we just don't grow food. And you're going to be back onto the homestead again with your families and your neighbors and trying to figure it out. You know, I hope I answered some of the questions. Maybe I went off on a tangent, but I was trying to relate all these different ideas together to try to paint a broader picture. And Ransom, I hope you were showing some of the slides, because that PDF that I sent you, plus the dual arrowed, picture there, and the the cannibalism thing that was coming out of the New Zealand with the Maori. This whole thing, I mean, sheesh, how many points in history can you hit again and again and again before people don't? We're at the crux in history where you're either going to accept the reality around you, or you're not going to survive. And perhaps the reason that all the survivors are here having the same conversations, perhaps we had this population before. And suddenly those who didn't believe or didn't see the signs, and I am saying there are so many signs. Dude, there's signs in the heavens. There's signs across the planet with shockwaves. If you can't see the fireballs coming in, if you can't see the disruption in the economy, can't see the governments like restructuring right now across the planet, can't see people behaving strangely, can't see the psychosis across all of society. If you can't see any of that and you haven't even noticed one of those points, I'm sorry. I'm going to be rude and say you are absolutely asleep. Perhaps you're listening to this broadcast tonight for the first time. Thank you for joining us. And I really hope that you might start to perceive or look at reality in a different way and maybe see some of these things that are inbound so you can help others at this time. And there's so much, there's only small amount of hand holding that we can do to pull people across the finish line. Because when it gets nasty, I'm looking for people with skills. I'm looking for people I can trust. I'm looking for people that have farm experience, grow food experience, tool repair, machine repair, woodworking, preserving. This is the thing I'm looking for. And if it comes down to it, or we need to do like the Amish, where we got a long saw, we're 6 foot long, where one person has one end of it, and like the old lumberjacks, where you see, don't tell me you're tired after 5 minutes, bro. Don't want to hear that, because you're not welcome. If you 2 hours in and we felled a few trees, yeah, take a water break. But if you're going, oh, it's just too difficult, and after 4 minutes or 3 minutes, then you're not the right person. You're absolutely not, because you're going to have to push it hard. You're going to push it to the point when you're exercising where you're going to need to vomit before you actually make a difference. And I'll leave it there.
I just got tired and sick thinking about that, standing out there in the sun all day. I've done it so many times. And that's actually a good point. And I thought, we were kind of doing this wrong. So I got your PDF out right now, and I thought we could go by it point by point so you know which picture I'm showing, because I was showing it. And then I started showing some other stuff because you started talking about something else. But, what was I saying? Yeah, this PDF here. And this is all like things that have happened in our past. And I'm a big buff of the, different histories of the world and how they progress. And, that the worst year to be alive is one of the best examples, because there's so many triggers and markers that you can see in different empires around the world that are happening simultaneously in real time. At least back then, where people were dealing with the same thing everywhere. Like if you lived in Japan, you were having hard life. If you lived in China, you were having a hard life, if not, starving to death. If you were in Europe, you were dealing with the same thing. The Mayans were dealing with the same thing. In South America, empires disappeared and started right at that same 50-year period after that happened. And when you really look at it, you see a massive migration of people in the past. So, for example, after 539 or so, there's really 150 years of nothing in the Mayan Empire. And when I say nothing, I mean they're not building nothing, they're not burying nothing, they're not farming, they're not doing anything. However, up in North America, some things are changing, because it seems like there are migrants coming from all over the world, in their world, And things are changing. For the first time, you start seeing complex mathematics reappear in North America, since mound builders and stuff that are, older. These things are going on all over the place, and they're marking times and mathematics to save them for the future. But what's really weird in the Southwest specifically is all of a sudden they start farming and hoarding grains and building silos and rock buildings and all of this stuff. It's the same time Chaco Canyon got going, and from there a whole new lifestyle starts for some period of time in North America, and it's probably and most likely from the influx of people from somewhere else. And then you fast forward, in time, and then Mayans seem to have reoccupied their cities. So meaning that people came back, things changed. It might not even have been the same empire exactly, but then come the Toltec, then come the Aztec, then come the Spanish, and on and on. And we're seeing this happening today. So it's never stopped, literally. So if you go back and just start your historical lessons around the time of colonizing and keep track of the empires from there, and you'll realize none of them last. They all morph into something else, and they're continually expanding and shrinking. And not only that, mass migration is happening each time some kind of conflict, famine, disease, whichever one you pick as the trigger, they're all happening. And to think that us in our day is not going to deal with something like that is kind of naive. So when you wonder why you see certain psyops, and I'm not going to name them, we all know what we're talking about, when the whole world just goes authoritarian in unison. Every country on earth participates, regardless of their enemy or political status, their geopolitical ties, or any of that. They all do the same exact thing. Should have been a key indicator to everybody in the world that there is a single source of authoritative power on earth, and that authoritative power, when it wants something done, it gets it. It's the one that decides when, where, and how people migrate. It decides when and where people go to war. It decides when and where people are poisoned or they get to live a good life for a period of time. And you can see that this chain of power has never broken, despite the historical movements of empires. They're always doing something in unison that's worldwide. And right now what we're dealing with is the reshaping of the map again, but this time for a final one world government. And I think that that's what's really happening here. The Great Reset is actually kind of like seeing 2020 in hindsight. Now that we're a few years in the future, we can see that we were right about what they were doing, what they were plotting. And if you tell yourself, it's only coincidental that every nation, enemy, foe, ally, whatever, did the exact same thing, took the same steps, implemented the same totalitarian measures, you would realize that there is indeed actively a world authoritarian source of power. And we don't get to look at it, we don't get to see it, but it's decided that we're going to reset. So I don't think that, any amount of debates on TV or, voting for this side or that side is going to change the fact that they're initiating the new phase of humanity. And the new phase of humanity doesn't look like the old one, just like every other phase that disappeared didn't really look like the old one. The Christian Empire didn't really look like the Roman Empire, but yet it had the same power structure and it moved in the same ways as far as expanding empire. And then that turned into the Euro we see today, the United Nations, the League of Nations, not in that order, but we've seen that. There's only one move left for the world power, and that's to transition and tell everyone that they live under the same form of government. And in order to do that, they're going to have to implement what is their communist program, because that's the one that they've used over time to destroy, redistribute, and recreate nation after nation on earth. And we're getting to see that the Western world is now in line for their turn to conform to this world ideology of authoritarianism. And first they're going to attack the foods, because just like in the past, these communist movements kill millions, tens of millions, and probably hundreds of millions, in different ways that aren't directly related but are indirectly related. I would say hundreds of millions. We know this, and we call it democide. A lot of people don't even know what that word means. And it actually is death by governance or death by government. And that's what we're about to look at. And so you could pick, and you could put your little flag in your bio of which side you picked, or, fly your flag of who you're voting for. But no matter who gets in, they always vote the same way together in unison for any major product or project. Like, I don't know, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. I mean, you can go on and on and on. All of the little projects from the New American Century, or the Project for a New American Century, have been done. They've happened. They even knew how many people might or will die. They projected the amount of people that would die in the upcoming wars of nations we would invade. They called correctly the transition of the manned Air Force over to a AI Air Force, and that would be completed in the year 2025. And you see that all in real time. So every single program that they've showed us, name one of them where the people came together, they marched, they voted, and the world governance changed their directive. I haven't seen it yet. I'm hoping to see it. Maybe that's the benefit of collapse, is that you have a hand in rebuilding what's made. But other than that, they seem to get their way every time.
Well, Ransom, you could always, if you're, the small minority in charge of the government, you could always do what the Aztecs did and just have a bunch of big rituals around pyramids with the naysayers. But I got Herb Green here, just said, and this one strikes close to my heart because I'm going to Peru next month. The Inca walked a trail, an ancient stone highway, struggled up the mountain to Machu Picchu, found an abandoned giant's castle, made repairs with pebbles. Giant never came back, but the garden was ripe. Poetic, in a sense. I like that. But I was just going through a whole bunch of, Brian Forrester's work there, and just that whole area in Peru. And I think it's almost just as interesting as Egypt or Turkey or something, but there's 5 different layers of construction there. You have these couple different layers of old megalithic construction. Absolutely. And then you have the couple kind of in the middle layers of just Indians. And then you have the Incas, that's the last one, and the Spaniards. And if you ask any of the old books from the conquistador times around the 1500s or so, they all say that ancient giants built everything. That's what they all say. And why was the civilization building up on the mountaintops is what I always wonder. So South America and in Mexico, Mexico City, the Aztecs and stuff, they were building up in the lake in Mexico City, which is surrounded by mountains. You're at 8,000 foot elevation. Cusco, you're at 11,000 foot elevation. Why were all these ancient civilizations that had these ancient, insane stonework knowledge, it's just unfathomable? Why were they all building on top of mountains? What was going on back then? And this is, way before. I think when it comes to the old, and Brian Forrester thinks this too, when it comes to the oldest layer of megalithic stuff, you're looking at back 12,000 years ago or so, and the sea level or earlier. And the sea level's way down back then. So the sea level, the coastline of Peru just goes out for hundreds of miles past where it is now. Florida's twice as big, Indonesia's one giant supercontinent. Everything just totally different. And plus, human civilizations, they build on the coast. Where's our big cities? Los Angeles, New York, Miami. They're all right on the coastline. So, all that stuff, if they were doing the same thing, that's all underwater now. But what was the deal with these, big cities up on the mountaintops? What were they looking for? What were they planning for? I don't know. But I had to say something there. And then I also need to pick on, real quick before I hand this back to David, I need to pick on Runs with scissors again. He says, I feed the pigeons because squab is a delicacy in New York City. I am a pigeon owner, and my girlfriend actually just had to describe to me what squab is. It is when
Yard bird.
barbarians eat baby pigeons. And I will just say, runs with scissors, besides maybe the chicken, pigeons have done more for the human race than any other type of bird, and you should appreciate them a little bit more. David?
Get your pigeons ready to. If your ham radio doesn't work, we always have pigeons. See, I realize they are one of the original carrier birds. I mean, along with, falcons and that sort of thing in the Middle East. But if we're going to bring it back full circle here, we're going to talk about, pigeons carrying messages. So who is, versed in, what would you call that? Pigeoning? I don't know, but I've seen a lot of people with, if you go into some cities over in Asia, a lot of people have pigeons on their roofs and they have different types of things like this. Yeah, and the Amish use them too. They send messages back and forth. Even today, right this second, I know they use pigeons to, home in and zoom back over to different communities. It takes about 30 minutes to drive from one to the other. There's 3 of them here. They make a triangle, so they're about equally spaced, 30 minute, 30 minute, 30 minute. Well, those birds, they fly back faster than the cars go, like literally as the crow flies, but this one as the pigeon flies. Because they're zooming over the mountains, they don't have to worry about the curves around the valleys and the bottom of the riverbeds and thing. I really believe we're going to roll back the clock to something like an 1860s pioneering lifestyle as we go through this. And there were still some sorts of medicines at that time, and people understood the basics of the body, and people understood the basics of transportation and the basics of mechanization. But it's not to the uber like we have now with 1/1000th of a millimeter thick wire, that sort of thing. But they did have telegraph lines that fried during the Carrington event at that time. So, even look back into the late 1850s, they still had telegraph wires going everywhere across the U.S. So think about something like that. Winding it back to the slowness of communication or the ability to communicate with somebody else. Now, these are the things you kind of need to do Rubik's Cube for thinking about the future. Because, as we come back for hour number 2 here, I really wanted to delve into the PowerPoint that I'd sent over Ransom, because I did that same talk with Seth Whole House over at Man in America. But even since that time, I've added a couple new slides in, because once I got with Seth and we were talking for a while, I was like, man, I got a few more things I need to look up after we're done here. So this PDF that I wanted to roll through, these 3 events that are inbound here are so significant for us as a human race and what to look for. Because I remember one of the comments, somebody was asking, what can we do if meteorites come in? Remember that one that I saw earlier? We're going to look that comment back up again. Somebody's asking about, well, how can we protect, or what can we do something against meteorites? And so here, Taco Banana. Anything we should do, maybe watch for to protect ourselves from these bolides coming in. Also looking into getting extra metal roof materials in case a giant hailstorm hits down the road. Well, the indications are we're moving toward a 4-pound hailstones. And you come back to the biblical prophecies, and they were talking about how big were the hailstones going to be, Ryan? 20 pounds, something like that. They had an old weight measurement in the Bible, which is probably equal to 20 pounds, a tear or something like this. But when you're talking about hailstones that pound wood homes into splinters, where when you look after the hailstone has passed, you don't even see a town anymore because it's been smashed into literally splinters and pounded into the mud. This kind of largeness, electromagnetic changes, and that image we have on the screen right now is truly what I'm envisioning coming in April, like on the daily. The amount of meteorites that are going to come in is absolutely going to be mind-numbing for our populace here on the planet. And, we'll take a look at this PDF and, what you can expect as we move forward from now. It begins now, and it culminates somewhere, in the middle of April will be the maximum effect from meteorites rolling into the atmosphere. And then, as we come into September, October of the following year, Revelation, a gigantic hailstones weighing 100 pounds. Oh, I got that about 5 times too light.
1 talent.
What was it? Talent.
Is a talent.
Yeah, it's a talent. Talent equals 100 pounds. I thought it was 20, but I guess I'm 5 times too light on that. Can you imagine a 100-pound hailstone?
Our premium beef cubes are sous vide, freeze-dried, and ready to be eaten right now, or in a decade from now. We want you to eat our beef now, so you can buy more. Prep with steaks, not with beef crumbles. This is a high-quality product. It's all American beef and 100% natural. None of that craziness of lab-grown meat and mRNA jabs. Our beef has a shelf life of 10+ years. This is high-quality cooked and freeze-dried beef for long-term storage or not. Eat well today and eat well tomorrow. Click the link in the description to get your Prepper beef with Prepper All Naturals, so you will always know what's for dinner.
Pro Clear Cleanse is the most powerful spray cleaner on the market today. No elbow grease necessary. Pro Clear Cleanse cuts through grease and grime like a chef's knife. Finally, the one cleaner that can do it all. Powerful surfactant cleaning technology cleans ovens, glass, porcelain, even polished wood. Environmentally friendly, less packaging and waste with no harsh smells, pet safe, child safe. 5 tablets equals 1 bottle of traditional cleaner. It's 5 months of cleaning for a fraction of the cost. Behold the grease-erasing power of Odor Crush. Simply drop a tablet into your bottle of warm water and shake it so it is evenly diluted. Spray the surface you want cleaned. Let set longer for tougher grease. Take a paper towel or a reusable cloth and wipe. Done and done. One of the best things about Pro Clear Cleanse, it's you can take it anywhere. Hiking, camping, or on vacation. Without having to buy or bring cleaner, you can store the same potential in the tablets, then just add water and bam, you have a bottle of cleaner. Order now and make life a little easier and cleaner.
It's unknown if early man knew they would be the progenitors of great civilizations, or if they knew when their empires would fall and disappear into history. Fortunately for us as modern man, we can recognize that we are at the precipice, a point in history where we can see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us.
And one of these, Herb Green says, talking about property taxes, leave a note in the mailbox saying the property tax check is in the mail. Well, here in Tennessee, we can pay our property taxes with precious metals. So going back to Lynette Zhang's comment earlier on an overnight reset, think about this, if we're going to go to $40,000 an ounce gold, so I'm going to do the quick math. I got my calculator up. I'm one of those guys who know where my calculator is. And if we're going to divide by what? I'll be generous and say the rate comes down to 60, and we get the gold to silver ratio down to 60, which I think it'll be way, way, way higher, probably like 10 by that point or something, the demand. If gold goes to 40,000, you're looking at $700 per ounce silver. And that's on a 60-to-1 ratio. But if we come down to like a 10-to-1 ratio, you're looking at 4,000 per ounce on silver. So at that point, the economy is going to be so discombobulated anyway that an ounce of silver would be able to, probably buy your neighbor's farm. Everybody's going to be in arrears. They're going to try to be confiscating everything. And if you're able to walk up to the property assayer and slap a gold coin on the desk and say, I'll take my neighbor's farm, but they stay on the farm. Give me the title. Hey, you're taking too long. Snap, snap, snap. No. That's what you want. That's how you do something proper with your precious metals.
Your old
You
Edison
keep your
light bulb
neighbors
for a
on
new
their
LED
property
light.
during this
Take a solar
time.
panel.
You don't buy their farm and kick them off. You buy the farm and you keep them on there, because then you got the security, you got the community. Those people are super happy they didn't get kicked out of their house. And then there becomes some trust between those around you. Because, where I live, it's mainly farms around here. A lot of people own acreage. Is there anybody out here that owns like look around. Like how many? 20 acres, 11 acres, 10. That seems to be like a normal size for a lot of properties that have been on the market, and these older farms too, like these older family farms. Damn, those are always like 200. The minimum is like an older family farm is like 80, 50, something like that. It's ridiculous. Like these people who got this land from their families in the 1930s and 40s, they always have 100, 200, 300 acres, always. You know, and I'll think about them. If they don't have that paid off by now and they're still trying to pay property tax and they can't because they don't have this, they didn't save. Oh, you know, how many people are so complacent around you that are, oh, no, it'll never happen in America? Because I went to a retirement party this last few days. I was invited, and it was awesome, man. Just really great crowd and like super friendly people, good accommodation, just down home people that are just, you know, living their lives. And that conversation came up a little bit, and every one of them pretty much unanimous is like, that would never happen. And plus, I have enough money in the bank, it wouldn't even matter. But they're all saving in U.S. dollars. That's what matters. So, this is the whole what do you call that bias when people can't see in front of them?
Normalcy bias.
Normalcy bias. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, everybody thinks this U.S. dollar is going to last into perpetuity. Like in 100 years, we're going to still have U.S. dollars, and everybody will still be using it. They can't just all go off the dollars. Everybody's got to use trade. You can't ever go to zero, huh? That's the whole mentality of this thing is people just think that can't ever go to zero or ever hyperinflate. So what happens if you're a millionaire and we get into hyperinflation and it costs you $1 million to buy a loaf of bread? At that point, then what? Now, I mean, $1 million is really not. I actually talked to Lynette about this hyperinflation event, and I was asking her, what's if the money resets? What do you think it'll be? Will it be 10 to 1 reset, 100 to 1 reset, or 1,000 to 1, or 10,000 to 1? And she said, oh, an average. This is just an average over the last 500 years of resets. 500 years. The average, 1,000 to 1. That goes from the Dutch way back to everything in between, and the tulip bubble and everything. And you're going far back. Spanish, Dutch, doesn't matter. All these other failed currencies across the planet, the average reset, and this is a strange thing. On the first revaluation is 1,000 to 1. And she was saying, you know what? You need to get out on the first reset. Not the third reset, because there'll be zero value left, but on the first, and again, this is very clean advice from her. When it resets, it's going to be an overnight reset. That's fine if you're ready. And they're going to reset it, and there'll be some stability. It'll probably buy them 6 weeks, maybe 8. The first reset is when you're going to want to actuate on your plans, whatever those are for your metals. 1,000 to 1, fine. Doesn't matter. You're holding a piece of metal. It's going to reflect whatever the money value is, the paper. Once it comes to the second reset, people are not going to really believe it anymore. And the third reset, there's almost zero confidence. And the wheelbarrow full of money thing is, we don't have that much printed money anymore, so that's not going to work. That's not going to be this time. It's a digits on a screen thing. And her whole analysis bended around the belief in a system. On the third reset, there's absolutely almost zero belief that third reset's going to do anything at all other than create fire starter for you. You know, on the first one, people still believe that, okay, there's hope, it's going to start again. Yay, we got it figured out. All these problems are going to be solved if we just reset it. And then they're quickly going to realize that they're going to go into a second reset because the first one didn't work. So if the second one doesn't work, what are the chances of a third one working? And that was the whole mentality, because even if you have $100 trillion by the third reset, it really is like nothing. Nobody's even going to want it. There's going to be no tradable value for it. It'll have zero confidence behind it. So get out on the first one, actuate, get the resources, buy the land, help your neighbors, help them stay, pay their medical bills, whatever it is that you can use your metals for to help your community on the first reset. Because after that, it's just going to collapse anyway. So just hold on. And then they're going to reset it finally after that fourth capitulation. The fourth capitulation comes back to base metals again. There'll be no more paper at that. And then she's like, well, then you're kind of you're set for life after that because everything reverts back to the base metal. It's the only way they can restart a system is using metals to start the system again. because nothing after that third reset will be agreed upon or believed. And it's just going to revert back to metals anyway. So get out, get your can in the hyperinflation on the first event. Just wait it out, put your knee on the ground, just wait it out. And finally, they're going to go to a metal system anyway, and then you'll be the leader in that board right there. So don't jump and try to actuate on the third one. That's the worst one to try to actuate on. But anyway, Revolution Radio, again, thank you for letting us speak our minds tonight. And anybody out there considering keeping free speech on air, Revolution Radio, revolution.radio. Right up there at the top, navigation bar, the nav bar, donate. And, a lot of people talking about crypto wanted to go into the Taiwanese news because one of their politicians was busted. It was supposed to be a very, personable mayor. Everybody loved this guy. Everybody was donating to him. It was like the local worker kind of person who was like, yeah, this person's for the people, and it ended up stealing an enormous amount of money, like what we consider over $100 million, and put it all into Bitcoin. And he got caught busted with 1,500 Bitcoin. Now, nobody knows, nobody in Taiwan was really, they tried to do a sandbox thing back in the day about, trying to bring crypto there and, make Taiwan the crypto island and lead Asia. But their ancient ass politicians were like, no, this whole crypto thing, it's too this, it's too that. And then Korea took the lead and Japan took the lead. And then Taiwan's like way last behind. Archaic thinking of the politicians there. But anyway, this guy, the mayor of Taipei, ended up finding his cold wallet with 1,500 Bitcoin in it.
87 million.
87 million before, yeah. Because what price is Bitcoin today?
58,000.
58. Imagine when it was 70, that would have been over 100 million. And as you look at this and you go, all right, well, now they understand. Now people are learning real quick what blockchain is and ledger. Right. So now it's like this immersion, this instant immersion course in what's a Bitcoin, what's a cold wallet thing for the whole country, because they're one of their main politicians just racked off 100 million from this is the people who worked like taxi drivers and those that had food carts, and like the average like working person supported him so much that they believed in him. Like most politicians are pretty like careful. They were just so ridiculous that they were trying to shove all this like cash that they got from illegal real estate deals in through the ATM to like hide their money, like putting it in through an ATM. It took his wife like 6 weeks of putting the maximum into an ATM, which over there is way more maximum than here. It was like $10,000 a day, every single day for like months and months and months and months on end. And they thought they wouldn't get caught, and they were trying to stuff ATMs into deposits. Like, we don't have any money. It's all in the bank. Well, yeah, you just stuffed how many like millions of dollars into an ATM machine. It's ridiculous. But anyway, he got caught. So look for more regulation over in Asia because of this person. But anyway, Ransom, I'm rambling, man. I'm sorry. I always hog it, man. I always hog the introduction for the second hour, but
no, you're all right. I don't know what to talk to. I'm so scatterbrained right now. We talked about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, throw up the PDF. We can go through that.
Right. Let me find it here.
But ramble for a minute, man. Just go with it.
All right. So, I was going to show this first because we kind of talked about it last week when we were talking about the water supplies, right? We were talking about the water supply, the different aquifers. And in New Mexico, I was pointing out the Permian Basin, and I was talking about, how the food is grown right in between all the fracking wells and the oil wells and all of that stuff. So you could see it littered across the map. And now how they're going to, deal with all this contaminated water. They're going to supposedly clean it and then put it back out for us, to drink and to water our plants and all of that stuff. So right there, you just it adds to the whole toxification that I was talking about, that how can you really want to eat the food that's grown in between what they're doing on the map? And I'm not against the fossil fuels, but it's just the idea of growing your food in the same areas and then drilling through the aquifers that you also water your plants on, almost like it's designed to make sure that you're so to speak, it's like salting the earth through here. So this is a big range. And if the weather changed just a little bit to add more moisture, which it seems to have been doing actually the last couple of years, but everywhere is still on high alert global warming drought status. So in order to fix the drought, we're going to start using all the tainted waste oil water. And they're supposedly going to treat it. Then we're going to, mix that over, and we're going to spray it on the fields of the GMO foods that everyone eats. And it's already saturated in forever chemicals and things like that. But now, we're going to give it a second layer and add people to use it. So that was one scatterbrain thing. And then to answer Ryan's question about why were they building these megalithic things up on all the mountains? Well, if you were to believe that the actual megalithic stuff, that is the giant stones, not the later Inca rubble style building. And I've actually got a chance to talk with Brian Forrester a couple times and pick his brain, did a couple interviews with him because I'm fascinated with the same exact topics. The Inca just came in and found that. It's well established that there are these megalithic structures all through South America, Central America, that somebody built long before the Mayans, Aztec, Inca, and other, empires came. Now, there is a particular interesting group of people called the Paracas people that seem to be migrants from Eurasia, and now we have haptypes and stuff to back up, some other genetic evidence of mitochondrial DNA placing them in Eurasia. So they got on boats at some point in the distant history, and they sailed for South America as if they knew something was there. They did a beeline straight for the biggest cove in South America, the natural port. And right behind that is where all the megalithic structures are up the mountain. Now, why were they building up there? Well, the Earth, if you were to believe that some of these structures are really, really old in the 10 to 12,000 range, and that they might have been built a long time ago, then you would realize the Earth was a big, big place. It was a lot bigger than it is today. 400 feet of ocean water wasn't on the lands today. And you asked where were all the cities? Well, they're underwater at the mouths of rivers and different places, 400 feet below most of the new ocean that came. So the atmosphere would have been really thick, all of those places where human beings lived. And you would have had to, just like later Mayans and Aztecs did, you'd have to get up above the canopy. But if you were on the mountains, you would know that the sky is perfect, clear. So you would get a chance to observe the eternal clock of the universe and literally look right at the creator. So it's no doubt in my mind that they built these giant places in specific spots that has something to do with keeping track of the precession of the equinox and the 52,000 at least calendar that they've been keeping track of. And you would have had a stationary high altitude spot to keep track of that and to see it clearly and keep track of all of the other celestial objects. But just think about the air quality 400 feet below sea level versus on top of a mountain. So, that kind of tells me why they were doing that. How they were doing it, when they did it, that's a question. There was no writing with the people that did it. But we do know that, history is on its head as far as especially the Americas. If you remember, they tried to claim that Clovis man barely got here about 13,000 years ago and stuff like that. We all know that that's complete nonsense now. We know that human beings have occupied North and South America for 30,000 years plus at least, judging by recent archaeological finds like sloth bones carved into, pendants and necklaces and things like that. And plus right here where I live at White Sands, New Mexico, there are agreed upon human footprints 23 to 25,000 years ago. And that's 10,000 years before the supposed, ice bridge melted and people came through a corridor and stuff. So we know that people were sailing the oceans. And by the way, think about all of the Polynesian islands, all of the islands like Easter Island, Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania, all of that stuff, where people made it to, and we're talking backwards of 40,000 plus years for people to get there. Now, they didn't just walk across over there, the whole thing. They had to have boated, which means that there's entire histories and migrations of people that we know nothing about. However, some of the ancient people seem to have still known about the places, where they were, what they were, and the mathematics surrounding them, and they continued those traditions on for a few more thousand years. And then we get to this point now where we have a complete dumbing down of the entire population that's unconnected to its entire history. Most people don't look up at all, so they're not even watching the sky at this point. They wouldn't see any changes if there were. And to skip back to the ancient Sumerian tales of Tiamat and stuff, it kind of makes sense in a way that there might be an object out there like a said planet, but I don't think we would notice it because whatever relevant balance and equal and opposite reaction had to have happened on the first couple of rotations. So you got two ideas that are possible. There is an object that is in perfect sync with our solar system, and that's why you don't see any ill effects of the planets today. Or B, a rogue planet did come through our solar system at one time, tilting Uranus to its side, no pun intended, and then removing some of the moons off the bigger planets and destroying or partially destroying one of the planets on its way through, taking some of the moons and leaving some of its moons, i.e. our moon. And that's how the story goes, at least. The Kinsu was the companion to the other star, but became Tiamat's new companion as Tiamat's moons went off with this other celestial body. And, you know, for all we know, it did what a lot of scientists theorize. It was a rogue planet. It came through. It did a couple of revolutions through or orbits through the solar system and then lost its stable orbit and proceeded out into space. And you might have Anunnaki icicle pops out there somewhere on a frozen world just floating out in deep space. But if, you know, they were to come back, it seems like we've been collecting all the gold for them. But I guess I've rambled now on forever, but I'll skip over, David, to your PDF and kind of just talk through it, and I'll go down the slides as you have them, so that we're in sync there.
Yeah. So before we get to that, I wanted to read out here. Cass and Nim was saying we're dipping into the 40s and 50s next week. Crazy. It's not even mid-September. And I'm in Zone 7B. We're the same here, Zone 7B in Tennessee. Actually, 7A here on our grow zone. But it's interesting in the 40s, 50s. You know why? Because as I'm reading through this bevy of news from the Watchers.news, Electroverse, SOT.net, if any of you, because I like to give you my sources too. I don't want to just like say things and regurgitate. I would like you to come to the same news feeds that I look at, because perhaps you're going to view it in a different way and find a different connection of information than I see. And that'd be great to be able to listen to those types of ideas. So I'm over on SOT.net. It's called Sign of the Times, SOTT.net. And they have an Earth Changes section and early snowfall in the Czech Republic. It's like one of the earliest snowfalls that they have had in some years. And it was only at like 3,000 feet. It's not like at 10,000 or 12,000, 3,000 feet. And they already got blanketed. I mean, blanketed snow. And here's an interesting thing. They're expecting some massive, record smashing rainfalls to come through Europe, Central Europe right now. And if that turns into snow, we're talking about record smashing, multi-feet snowstorms coming in at the same time, starting on this weekend, another day or so after this. But then also Arctic air brings early snow to Scotland's mountain tops. So you're telling me here in America that dipping into the 40s and 50s at night in the same zone along with Tennessee here, and then early snowfalls in Czech Republic, and we got Arctic air in Scotland bringing snow early into the mountaintops. We got massive record floods across Nigeria, Thailand, Laos got a huge, but again, they did have a typhoon that went up there, or cyclone. But you start to look at this and, everywhere across the planet, we're starting to see anomalies with rainfall, but that would be expected because we had 14% more moisture pushed up into the atmosphere from the Hunga Tonga eruption. Now, see, everybody's saying, well, is there any causation? Yeah, we had one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in the last 200 years, just a year and a half ago. we're coming into this magnetic anomaly here, and there's supposed to be no relation. That you shouldn't look at that. That's not a causation. There's nothing related there. And, super typhoon Yagi is like a category 6, at least they say. Maybe they're trying to pump it from global warming. But also, Dalvanius Tiv says, weather here in Golden Horseshoe has been cooling the last few weeks, earlier winter this year. And I can attest, Ryan, can you see our leaves are changing a little bit earlier this year, too? They usually don't change until October, but this year we're already starting to get like yellow leaves on the trees. And what is it, September 12th? And we're already getting yellow leaves changing on our forest up here. That usually doesn't happen for a full month. Like in the first week of October, and if I saw yellow leaves on the tree, I'd say, okay, that is normal. But yellow leaves on trees, and I got all kind of other trees around, and we got sycamores and sassafras and all these. They're all turning. What is that one out front? Is the sumac trees are already turning bright red on the leaves. Not the poison sumac, but the actual sumac, vitamin C tree. That is turning bright red already. And I was out on the cherry trees today, and they were turning yellow. And I got a bunch of red leaves sitting on my plum trees, and a huge amount of leaves on the peach trees are turning yellow. Like, that's way early, and they shouldn't be turning those colors already. But, that just validates that it seems to be happening, at least confirmed here in North America. And if it's like that here, Canada for sure, North America total. And then we're looking in Europe as well. So I digress. I digress on that. Let me, all right, here we go. Planetary Geometry 2024-25, parallel timelines for geopolitical, societal, and economic unrest, or reset, or cover up, perhaps. Because I'm looking at this, before we even starting here, what I'm looking at is like, we got all these 3 major events coming in. So think about it like this as we go through this little slide presentation here. If you're the governments of the world, how are you going to give excuses to the populace as these events come, and they will see it with their real eyes so they don't panic? That's more the question than it is the events we're seeing spin out of control across the world. Is this a result of the obfuscation of the events to either have you too scattered over here that you don't even see the fireballs rolling in because you're too glued to the screen? Or, oh, here's another one here. Shady Oak Tree says elderberries ripened a month early. Yeah, exactly. It's happening everywhere. So be the governments of the world, or the leaders, or just called the elite class, the moneyed class, whatever you want to call them, terms, parasites, parasitic elite, invasive hominid species, whatever you want to call them. Control the fear. Yeah, that's a great one. Okay, so on the left, you're looking at October of 2024. And on the right, you're looking at 79 AD. The thing that's similar with this is it's paralleled planet. Now, as you roll back through the planetary geometry of these different types of softwares where you can see where the planets will be in their orbits, you cannot find one with this precision of squaring. You can find it like an obtuse rectangle, or kind of a rectangle that's not, or a square that's not. It's kind of off a bit. They're wider. One planet's way, way behind, or 2 planets are way behind. You're getting these kind of like rectangles that are weird shapes. To find that same exact square, and believe me, I took days and days, if not weeks, way back in like 2015 or so, to do this research. And I was trying to disprove the point at that point. I was like, this can't be true. I need to disprove this. So I went back through all the way to 2500 BC, which you cannot do now with the same images that I just have there, because Solar System Scope does not allow you to go that far back. But to find the squaring of this, I know Neptune's in front and Uranus is trailing on this, but it's just the exact same squaring pattern. So we're looking at like once in a 2,000-year cycle anyway. So, if you're starting to see a lot of strangeness around people, government, economy, planets, heavens, then we're starting to see what I would consider, as was predicted years ago when I started this Adapt 2030 channel, you're going to see a bunch of strangeness inbound. And for some reason, when the strangeness arrives, you're like, well, it's really, I don't know, maybe next year it'll get stranger. You didn't call it correctly. Okay, well, I don't know how much stranger it needs to get before you go, gee, maybe there's something behind the validity. Maybe it's not exactly on the day or the month that it was called, but you can see a huge amount of factors coming in that match up with what was, predicted during this time for not myself, but an enormous amount of others, that it's going to get real strange. Yeah, can you hit that next slide? I know we're on a little bit of delay, but Ransom, can you pull one forward there?
It's there. That's what I was going to say. It'll show up a little bit behind for your feed, but we got it.
Yeah, so what you're looking at is the Earth behind the sun with those 4 gas giants. Now, imagine the sun as one magnetic field. And Jupiter and Saturn could very well interplay on themselves, because the Thunderbolts Project and everybody previously in the electric universe had talked about the legends and the myths of Saturn as another ignited, very brighter glowing heat source in our solar system of 2 of those, not Nibiru, but Saturn. So if Jupiter with an amplified toroid field starts interacting with Saturn as the closest between those 2. Now, if those 2 start to interact on themselves, could that not be a potentiality of Uranus also joining that? And then we're passing through a set of secondary toroid fields in the solar system that are not normally there. That the potentiality of something sweeping through our Earth or combining with our Earth's magnetic field would awaken human consciousness or perception abilities. I'm going to leave it there, and I'll swing to the next one. Because we're looking at, frequency and vibration. That's truly what's changing during this time. Frequency and vibration. Now, generally, that thing would spin on a, we'll skip off to the next one, I guess. Because I can't believe with a straight face that NASA comes now out and says, hey, there's a millivolt charge in the Earth's global electric current system, that there's actually a charge that we can harness and harvest in the atmosphere a week ago. And we're coming to this dual magnetic field and all this strangeness that was predicted. And then suddenly NASA a week ago says, hey, you know what? There's actually atmospheric electricity that we could harvest. But, Tesla talked about this in the 1880s, and somehow, it just doesn't jive anymore. I don't get it. I'm very confused on the timing of it all, where NASA comes out and says that we can harvest the current in this, and then suddenly we're poised for all these electromagnetic changes, and suddenly NASA says, yeah. So I'm wondering, what's the chances of the overlap on those 2 things happening? I don't think it's very high myself. I think it's probably less than 0.1%, but that's just me guessing. Wally Tango Foxtrot. Oh, perhaps that's a Charlie Foxtrot. Lots of conductive red iron, rich sandstone in the Grand Canyon. Attractive capacitor plate. Yes, exactly. Perhaps that is why it was planetary electrically scarred in that first plasma discharge between 2 planets. And that was talked about too in the in a lot of previous legends. Now, Ransom, go up to that one that's the Kabbalah that's plugged in there, those 4 planets themselves. And you start to look at this thing, and it's self-evident here. You're looking at Uranus and Jupiter plugging into Binah and Gebura. Then if you're looking at Neptune and Saturn, those are plugging into Chokmah and Chesed. And then you got Eris over here, and then you got Tapara or Tepereth, where the sun would plug in, and you saw the foundation exactly where Earth plugs in. And you can't tell me without a straight face that these planets are plugging in directly into the Kabbalah at this time when we're coming into the beginning of this cycle. So think about it as from Tepereth, from where the sun is, going back that direction, that is looking at the outer solar system. And that is the start of the cycle. So when we swing onto the bottom from Tepereth into Hod and Yesod, Naschek, what you're thinking about is the bottom of it is the inner planets that are going to complete the system. Now I've gone out to 2035 and I cannot find that exact play yet, where they're going to plug in exactly and complete the cycle. I didn't find it yet. Perhaps it's further out than 2035. You know, a lot of people doing research saying there's going to be a micronova in 2042. Was that the correct time? 2042 with Douglas Volt and Ben Davidson from Suspicious Earth. They were talking about a micronova event. I haven't gone out that far, but it is possible that the bottom of that would plug in somewhere around that time, and that would be the completion of the cycle. So you're telling me that we're coming up into this formation here that plugs directly into the Kabbalah, and we're not supposed to think that that's related at all, and all these earth changes are happening, and the entire shift of society and the reset's happening, yet we're not supposed to even look at this because it's what? There's something there. It's ingrained in religion, and one of the most important religions on the planet is the center core tenet of that religion and that belief system encoded in time, and we're not supposed to look at it. I don't know, man. And then if we go a little bit further ahead, then we start to look at the Hyundai cross, or Hyundai, however you like to say it, depending on your accent. Down here in Tennessee, we might say the Hyundai cross. But, you know, people were always asking what causes the angry sun. And if you look at that, it's very clearly the same squaring of Uranus, Jupiter, Neptune, and Saturn. Like if you plug those 4 planets in, that activates the sun and turns it into an angry sun. And suddenly our sun just goes 100% ballistic into the most sunspots, and just nobody is correct on the sunspot forecast, low or high. It has blown everybody's projections out of the wall. There's not even one person that's correct on the planet, not with their software, not with their knowledge. Nobody is correct on this because the sun has done something so strange that has caught everybody off guard. And then again, you know, we're supposed to dismiss this as it's somehow, well, they just got it wrong this time. But no, it's not got it wrong this time. It was projected that there was going to be massive anomalies in the sun. There was going to be massive solar anomalies at this time. And then you start to look at these more ancient, you know, iconography or depictions or pictures, for a better, ancient pictures of something. The angry sun would be a massive X-22 solar flare blasting at our planet, and perhaps that's why. And I'll go a little woo-woo here. You know, way back in my very, very, very first Adapt 2030 video, I used to use the moniker Plasma Dave back then. And I had gone off to Ed Dames' remote viewing session, talking about Ed Dames when he said that when there was an evacuation of the space shuttle or of the space station that would make international news, that there would be a massive solar flare that would destroy every electronic on the planet and would bring us back to the Stone Age. This was a remote viewing session from the head trainer that used to train everybody across all 3-letter agencies on how to do remote viewing. The number one guy, Ed Dames. After there was an evacuation from the space station that made international news, as in right now, directly after that, there was going to be a solar event that would wipe out all the electronics on the planet and bring us back to a, well, pioneering lifestyle. And here we have NASA discovering a long-sought electric field on the planet. And here's the interesting thing. A byline, like maybe 16th paragraph down, they said, "Oh, it's as important as gravity is to our planet. This global electric field or global electric circuit." Eugene Bagashov is truly the number one to understand this. Eugene Bagashov. So you're telling me that this thing is important as gravity on our planet just suddenly got discovered last week, and we're coming into a dual toroid field where the Earth's going to pass through the middle of that, and we're supposed to think that this is not related. And here's the thing. They want to talk about harvesting, and Ransom, we go to the next slide here. We're going to talk about patents from the 1920s after they improved them from Nikola Tesla about atmospheric electricity harvesting. And you look at some of this and you say, this is too wild here. They already knew where our crops were going to be destroyed from the 1640s reconstructions. Like, you already know this is where the crops are going to be lost. And these are major bread baskets across the planet. Like, you don't take this much, global grain production down cereal production and not have a drastic reduction in population. These two things are equivalent. The higher the grain yields are, the more the population can grow. You whack that out 30%, 50%, the population's got to match that carrying capacity. You're going down 50%. So look at all the dark blue. That's where we're going to lose crops. You can't tell me that, wow, that just magically, if we're going to lose that much crop on today's average growing areas, the amount of people that can be fed based on just this reconstruction means that the global populace needs to decline minimum 40%. And you notice that big bright red spot below Greenland, that's heating. Gee, southern Greenland's getting hotter. Well, it did in the 1640s also. So I don't know. Maybe it's just go back. And Ransom, could you jump to the next slide there, because this is a good one. What they're showing you is the different patents from the different years that were improved upon the Nikola Tesla initial inventions and patents from the 1880s and 1890s. So NASA here now comes and claims and says, hey, we could hopscotch right over solar panels and windmills and go right into atmospheric electrostatic harvesting of the energies to provide our electrical needs. And you could do that at point of source. So we wouldn't even need the lines above our heads any longer. So what that means to me, read between the lines, they're expecting absolute collapse of the electrical grid. But don't worry, you can produce electricity at your home to power your home in a little device in the corner of your room that they had in the 1880s, but they got us on this debt system, the never-ending wars, the resource pillaging, and the destruction of our planet and the natural ecosystems through mining and all these other. Now, don't get me wrong. The world is a very, very, very dangerous place at night with no light. So thank you, coal miners, for doing your jobs. But we never needed that or oil or anything if we would have gone and used Tesla's devices from the beginning. We just got brought up on this debt system that, never-ending perpetual wars that needed all this energy that, you can see where I'm going at this point here. But look at some of these patents. 1921, electroculture. Where have we heard that before? Capacitors and neuralizers. About the 1923 patents from Guelo and Standeo and Stanley Meyer with their patents, and Tesla's radiant energy patent from 1901. We're finally dusting these things off here and saying, oh, NASA says we can use them now because when we restructure our society after collapses and all our grids are down, that we can harvest electricity from the ether. Really? Like that just is something. It just happened 2 weeks ago. And we're coming into a new magnetic field state. Are you insane that this is not connected in any way, shape, or form? Please, event number 2, you can almost see it. Ooh, building the anticipation, you can see event number 2. That's all from event number 1, by the way. So let's get ready for event number 2. And it is called the Shepherd's Cross. If anybody has heard of this term before. The Shepherd's Cross used to be the knife, and you would put it in a loaf of bread and this sort of thing. But what we're looking at here, event 2. So this is December 6th of this year, just a few months away as well. We're going to get Jupiter, Earth, Mercury, and the Sun. Now, the thing about this, Mercury is a solid iron core planet, a solid iron planet, basically. Jupiter is the heaviest gravitational body planet with the most tug and effect on our planet that has the largest 7.0 earthquakes anyway when we connect with it twice a year. So you're going to get Jupiter, Earth, Mercury, and Sun in a direct line. For me, that if you were going to cause the most earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, just that one alone would be just like massive. But then in the same time, the same day, in the same seconds, we're going to have Venus, Earth, Mars crossing. So you can't tell me that the Earth's going to get tugged between how many planets there? And not only just how many planets, how many massively effective planets? Because Mercury is known to knock out sunspots in front of our planet anyway. They call Mercury our protector. So when Mercury's in front of us, generally sunspots just kind of disappear. But the gravitational effects and the potentiality of electromagnetism flow or electromagnetic flow. Think about the wires in your house hitting that, but being amplified by Jupiter, Earth, Mercury, Sun, crossed with Venus, Earth, Mars. Like, that's something significant in itself. Like, if you can't just look at that and go, wow, that could be a big day for earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. And then you're talking about volcanic eruptions. There's more volcanic eruptions, larger ones, and we get more cloud cover, light blocking particles, which means more reduction in agriculture, more reduction in crop yields, but we were experiencing that already. So you're going to get like a layering of reduction of crop yields. Explain that to the populace, why your food's 6 times more expensive, because they can't grow it. It's not because of geopolitical aspects of it. They just can't. Oh, it's farm financing. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was from the volcanic haze. And you wouldn't tell the people in advance to get ready. There could never be culpability, never be blame. Can we go to the next one? I'm going to call this the fuzz, and I think we discussed this once before, Ransom. I'm not sure. In spring of 2025, we are going to be in front of the sun after we spin out of that strange double toroid field. As the Earth spins around in front, we're going to be the only thing in front of the sun. The entire solar system is behind us, and it's going to form a gravity well. And that gravity well is going to pull debris into our planet from the side of Jupiter and Uranus tugging all that stuff in, and then Saturn and Neptune tugging all that stuff in, and we're going to get hit from both sides for 4 months straight. Now, explain that to a population of why there's more fireballs. Well, they've begun already, actually. And Ransom, if you could advance the slide 1 here to take a look at the close-in view of where Earth is going to be in front of the sun. It'll give you a good indication of, okay, the Earth's going to be right there in the front. But whatever way it's moving, so Jupiter's going to pull a lot of debris into itself as well, but it's going to go through the Earth first and then over to Jupiter. And Saturn, by all right, in all means, pulls a huge amount of stuff in, but it's going to go Earth first and then Saturn. And the sun pulls a huge, huge amount in, but it's going to go through the Earth first before it gets to the sun. So we're kind of triangulated in. If it goes through us to the west to the east over to Jupiter, if it goes, I'm thinking about planetaries. If it goes from the east to the west over through Saturn, if it goes directly north-south straight into the sun, we're going to get all 4 cardinal directions at all times for months on end. So, Ransom, if you advance that a little bit here to the next one, it's sort of a wider view to give you a perspective. How many volcanoes are going to wake up? Your guess is as good as mine. I'm going to say larger ones. Maybe it's not the number, but the ferocity, because you're talking about electric discharge at that point coming through the crust. That's the thing that people, including myself, have a hard time wrapping my head around. Are you talking about how deep is this discharge and how much potentiality of voltage transfer is there going to be in that? That's the whole thing. Yeah, it could be some crustal rumblings, but we're literally talking about overcharged capacitor discharging out through a volcano because it already has the least resistance to go out from. So here we are. This is the wide view here. You look at it and say, okay, well, I should have tilted this back a little further, but I kind of want to get that. It's forming sort of an arrowhead here. And we're talking about April of next year, not too far in the future. Ransom, could you zoom to the next one? Because the idea of this is just trying to put it into perspective. Because on the far side of the sun, that's our little dot of the Earth there, and that's not even the Earth. That was Mars on that left side there. There's really nothing in front of us. You got Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune behind, and the tiny little Earth way out in front of the sun. There's really nothing in front of us. So whatever comes in front, and we're going into a more debris-dense region of space anyway, whatever's going to get, it's going to be biblical, and that's kind of an understatement, really. And I hate to use that word because it's such a powerful word. Appalachian Observatory, thank you for that donation. Thank you for that. I'll say, Werner von Braun, Nazi head of NASA, wrote a book in 1952 where we colonized Mars, And the leader of Mars was named Elon. Can we give that an OMG right there? Wow, mind blown. Give it a... Ransom, could you throw up the next slide here? I'm going to come back to his comment in just a momento here, but I only have one slide left to top it off here. If we look at this last slide, October on the right, we're going to be in the center between the dual magnetic toroid fields, and then with just in months after that, we're going to swing around on the other side of the sun, and we're going to have all the space debris tugged into us. So be a government and control the panic. Control the panic. Control the, what would you call it? Unknown of civilization, or like people aren't going to believe in the banking system of saving for your retirement IRA after that. Somewhere between then and there, everything you know is stability and what is the into, I hope I stay alive during the next 10 minutes. And that's no joke either, man. They're going to see stuff coming in. And I was trying to say something earlier about the amount of fireballs that's going to come in. It's going to start to actually shake the atmosphere to the point there's going to be so many shock waves going on from so many meteorites coming in that the ground below your feet is going to continually shake and rumble. It's not going to be earthquakes. It's going to be either continuous ground strikes from these meteors or continuous airburst shock waves that hit the ground on a continuous basis. And whatever that is, where your feet are no longer stable, where there's continuous vibration in the air and on the ground, where your feet are feeling it and your eardrums are picking it up at the same time for months and months and months on end, I think it's going to send people a little bit scatterbrained. Just me thinking outside the box, but I don't think people are going to be thinking about like going to work at that time or saving money at that time or putting it in the stock market. I just don't know how those two go together. But anyway, Werner von Braun, wasn't he the director at NASA for the rocket program as well? Wasn't he? They brought him over from Germany. Wasn't he the director of the beginning of NASA? He set up NASA.
I think he was the second in command of the NASA.
Second in command, yeah, because I know he was very involved with with propulsion, at least at that point, and reentry orbit. What was that? Reentry orbit velocity, and
he made the rockets that were bombing London in World War II.
Yeah, kick that off for a second.
Yeah, so Werner von Braun, he made the rockets that were bombing London during World War II. I think he was the second in command of like their science division. Like Hitler was very big on, rocket technology. He was very big on that. And then when America won the war, then we took their best guy who was in charge of that he was the project manager basically of the rocket, division there. And we brought him over here and put him in charge of NASA. And he was very into science fiction. He was like he was a dreamer type, he was very into science fiction. And he wrote that one book in 1952, it looks like, where he was painting this picture of the solar system as we're going out and colonizing. They're very big into science fiction in the 50s and 60s. And for whatever reason, he said that the leader of the Mars colony was named Elon in 1952. And nowadays, I think, like today, they've been posting like Elon's, he's got live astronauts out in outer space, and they're farther away from the surface of the Earth than they've been in like 60 years or something. And it's Elon doing that. And I think they're also talking about how Boeing had a failure of trying to bring astronauts back from the space shuttle, and Elon is going to be bailing them out in a few months.
Wow. Hey, and can I throw that? I like that last article you had. What's that? DEA is going to lift and try to ramp up production of ADHD medications. For anybody out there, I am going to say I recommend modafinil, which is the limitless drug, because you just get more focus for, an incredible amount of time. And if you combine it with paracetam, and you maybe hit up some like cat's claw and rhodiola and vitamin C and vitamin B, and you get a whole bunch of, different vitamins at the same time as you're stacking all of that. I could say that you're going to be facing the world with incredible clarity and able to operate at optimum performance for incredible amounts of hours. If you're into that, there's no buzz or anything. Adderall's terrible, man. You'd always get like tweaked out and like, you would get buzzed on that. But modafinil mixed with a few other like vitamins and things, I don't know, the world kind of brightens and you get this clarity. It's hard to explain, where it's like things just are brighter and you can see faster and think faster and focus for, 8, 9, 10 hours at a time without even blinking. You got to set an alarm so you drink water kind of thing. You get too deep in the focus, you just forget to drink water. Like that's the kind of focus you need so you can bang out a bunch of either research, information, posting, video production, podcasts, live radio shows, or whatever it is. Just saying. All right, Ransom, we've been rambling too long. Take us out. Oh, civilizationcycle.com and buy me a coffee. Civilization Cycle. Thanks for everybody listening tonight. Ransom, what do you think about the slideshow there, man? How do you think governments are going to control the panic?
I don't know. About when it comes to what that is, it seems like, every time someone thinks that a rock or something's going to do something, it never quite does. But that kind of goes for people that think nothing like this will ever happen. We know things hit the earth periodically. Kind of one thing I was tripping on is the electrical output of the earth and the atmosphere, kind of the Tesla idea. And to link to kind of what we were talking about, megalithic stones, that might be one of the purposes or something like that they knew that those high quartzite rocks would have a piezoelectric effect, which would have been kind of magical. And, if anything like that were to happen today, I don't know what people would think about it. You think they would think it was like a miracle or something? Because almost nobody really thinks that things like that can happen. It'd be like a miracle. But that might have been why they were building those things. And the idea that you were talking about, continuity of government may have machines and things that run off of that type of technology in case things did go tits up, as far as the electrical grid went out. Because I have no doubt that they have backups for everything. They would pull out of it if anything happened with military force and technological toys that no one else had. That's kind of just the way it would end up being.
Yeah, because I will agree. It's not a single bullet that's going to come rolling in and like hit and like do a dinosaur extinction. It's going to be a huge amount of space debris. Now, some of it's obviously going to be small, like grains of sand, but other stuff's going to be like that one they picked up on radar and predicted that it would land over the Philippines. I think it was only 3 foot by 3 foot, and they were able to pick it up outside of our atmosphere, coming in, triangulate it where it was going to hit over the Philippines. A bunch of people drove up there, got up there, and were ready for their videos. And sure enough, man, it was in the exact same location, big bright green one that they thought was coming in. If they already know that kind of space debris is coming in, they already know exactly what type of density we're going to be rolling into. Thanks for listening tonight. CivilizationCycle.com.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.